Is it time to start believing? Is Joey Aguilar going to be Tennessee's quarterback in 2026? The plot thickens, the latest in a developing story as Joey is taking the NCAA to court here in Knox County.
You are Locked On Vols, your daily podcast on the Tennessee Volunteers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What is up, everybody? Welcome into it, your Tuesday morning Locked On Vols. I am your host, Cain, a member of the VolQuest.com team here in town, covering your Tennessee Volunteers each and every single day. Today's episode is presented by Mazda. We put the same drive in every detail, wins define the moment, putting in the work that defines you. Stay tuned for the highlights in this week's Moving the Game Forward segment. There's more to Mazda because there's more to you. Got a really interesting show coming up here today. First and foremost, I'm going to give you my thoughts on Joey Aguilar suing the NCAA, taking the NCAA to court here in Knox County, and why I believe this is a good move for Joey Aguilar in my expert legal opinion. Rolls eyes, but I do think this gives him more options. We'll get into that here in segment number one. The possibilities that he could win this thing and he could be Tennessee's starting quarterback in 2026. Mailbag questions coming up in segment two. Appreciate you guys as always, and we'll check in with Alex Donno of Locked On Hurricanes on Jadias Richard, Tennessee's cornerback from the Miami Hurricanes in the transfer portal. All that and more coming up later on in the show here in segment number three. Appreciate you guys as always making Locked On Vols a part of your morning routine, your first listen, your first watch each and every single day. We are a part of the Locked On Podcast Network, what is your team every single day, the number one sports podcasting network, and everydayers couldn't do this show without you. Join the Everydayer Club, $5 a month. You get an ad-free audio version of the show, access to the Locked On merch store, access to the Locked On Everydayer Discord channel. We can get in there and talk in a group chat. That is lockedonvols.supercast.com, lockedonvols.supercast.com, just $5 to join the Everydayer Club. All right, so Adam Sparks of Knox News had the report on Monday afternoon, did a really good job of breaking some things down. Of course, that's been out there in the public for about 12 hours now or so. Probably a little bit more by the time you're listening to this. So does a really good job of breaking down kind of what all this means. Essentially, Joey Aguilar is suing the NCAA. Well, again, I'm not going to act like I'm an expert in legal jargon. I'm an expert in how all this goes about. I've covered two legal cases at the University of Tennessee the last couple of years. I haven't really played point person on this one. So I get the language a little bit, but I am far from an expert in terms of how this is all going to go. Again, I've said this numerous times. If I could go back in all my years in schooling, because I was there forever, and if I could take some legal classes, common law, stuff like that, I would in a heartbeat, because we're seeing this more and more in the industry nowadays. But I have seen some cases, and I kind of understand the basis of what's going on, but I am far from an expert, so I'm not trying to be that. I'm just getting that out there in the open right now. Joey Aguilar is suing the NCAA, taking them to court. And you probably thought, well, he's already doing that, right? Here's the difference. Joey Aguilar was a part of Diego Pavia's lawsuit against the NCAA. He was a plaintiff in that suit. He was one of about 25, 26 other players in his position trying to get the NCAA to negate the JUCO years against him, not to allow those junior college years to count against their NCAA eligibility. Well, why does this matter nowadays? Of course, it means that you can play another year, but also it means even more nowadays because you can get another year of rev share. You have another year to profit off your name, image, and likeness. And let's be completely frank here, guys. People like Nico Iamaleava, players like Nico Iamaleava, and those like him in terms of in that ballpark of older, out of eligibility, might latch on to an NFL training camp of some sorts. Take Zakai Ziegler, for example. He's the perfect example. That's why he was trying to continue to sue and try to get back in the game as much as he could last year, because you're never going to make as much money playing this sport ever again. You might get a training camp, you might get a tryout here and there, but Joey Aguilar is likely never going to make as much money as he made playing at the University of Tennessee ever again. And so if there's another year to profit off that, you're going to do everything in your power to do just that. I don't blame him whatsoever for doing that. I don't blame Diego Pavia, whose blanket waiver allowed Joey Aguilar, Miles Kitzelman, Star Thomas, Trinidad Chambliss, and all these other guys around the league and around the country to play another year of eligibility. I don't blame these guys whatsoever. Again, I went on a tangent last week, and I talked about Charles Bediako, and we'll bring him up here in just a moment. Overall thoughts on this, my opinion, it's not good for the game. But I don't blame these guys for trying. Also, there's a big-time difference in what Trinidad Chambliss is trying to do at Ole Miss compared to Joey Aguilar at Tennessee. What Joey Aguilar is doing at Tennessee, what Charles Bediako's already done at the University of Alabama. They're all different. And the outlier here is Bediako has literally played professional basketball and is coming back to college. To me, again, amateurism's out the window, but to me, if there's ever a line in the sand, Bediako was past it, and he's come back and crossed that line in the sand. Again, he's the only one in this whole situation that has literally played professional sports and is coming back to college. There's been reports out there of a former NBA player that is trying to come back to college. Now, you knew it was you knew it was going to happen sooner or later, right? When Bediako did what he did, what the Baylor kid did, what they did. Again, Bediako is different from the former G League players that are playing in college basketball right now because, to my knowledge, again, Charles Bediako is the only one that played in college, left, and has now come back. And now you got a former NBA player trying to do the same thing that's still within that window. Basketball's pushing that boundary, right? Baseball could benefit from it the most, in my opinion, but we'll talk about that another day. Back to Joey Aguilar and all that. So you're probably thinking, okay, well, he's already suing the NCAA, right? Well, he's been a part of a plaintiff of Diego Pavia's lawsuit. He voluntarily asked to get out of that about a week ago. They did. They granted his release. He hired a lawyer, and that lawyer that he hired, I'm blanking on his name. I've got it right here. He hired a lawyer, Cam Harris, to represent him. Cam Harris has already beaten the NCAA when they came after Tennessee and Nico Iamaleava a couple years ago. So Tennessee has a good relationship with Cam Harris already. But he's already beaten the NCAA in a couple of different cases, most notably the one with Nico Iamaleava just a couple of years ago. So the reason he's doing this is just to give himself another option. You've seen Trinidad Chambliss, and he's set for a preliminary injunction hearing on February the 12th with a court in Oxford, okay? You saw Charles Bediako, and I made jokes about it all last week, but the judge/booster or whatever that heard his case, that was in Tuscaloosa, okay? So putting it here in Knoxville, I'm not saying that the judge is a Tennessee fan or anything, or a Tennessee booster or anything. I'm not saying that, but you have a better chance of winning this locally than you do going into federal court. It makes all the sense in the world. Trinidad Chambliss has not officially gotten the green light yet, but gosh, I don't know how anybody can feel confident about what's going to come from the court systems, but everybody is just assuming Trinidad's going to be back playing for Ole Miss next year, which it's kind of like putting the cart before the horse a little bit. But anyway, everyone's just assuming that that's going to be the case. So you have a better chance of winning at a local level than you do in federal court, in my opinion. Adam Sparks puts into his story from the court documents, says, quote, if the court granted Aguilar relief from the NCAA's JUCO rule in the near term, Tennessee has a spot for him on the roster and would welcome him back. His compensation for playing college football in 2026 would be approximately $2 million, which would be about right. That would be a step up from what he made this year, which was around $1.2 million for Aguilar. The complaint also says that Aguilar needs to know now. He needs relief now to know whether or not he should report to spring practice or prepare for the NFL draft. He is currently not enrolled in classes, but Tennessee does do a midterm enrollee, midterm session, which is what Edwin Spillman and Caleb Beasley did a couple years ago when they arrived on campus the 1st of March, took a class, and they were ready to go for spring practice. Joey Aguilar could do something like that if there's some resolution here pretty soon. So they're fighting this at the local level, and according to the complaint, you're fighting this in the Knox County Court because, quote, the cause of the action arose here where Aguilar played football, seeks to play football again, and suffers injuries from the NCAA's unlawful conduct. Again, this is going back saying, like, hey, I couldn't profit off my name, image, and likeness when I was in junior college. I could profit off my name, image, and likeness when I was in NCAA member-instituted programs, which is where I was, Aguilar, at Appalachian State for 2 years, the semester of UCLA, and then, of course, here at Tennessee last year. So that's kind of what he's doing right now. Now, here's the difference, and Adam does a really good job of breaking this down in his report yesterday. Since he's no longer a part of the Diego Pavia lawsuit, remember, Diego Pavia is not going to play college football no matter what. It's just him and his legal team are leading the charge. They're not bound together whatsoever. So there's a preliminary injunction hearing for that case on February the 10th. If it is denied, that doesn't mean that Aguilar is going to be denied as well. If it is granted, that would mean Aguilar is not included in that because he's no longer a plaintiff. However, there would probably be another blanket waiver that would take care of Aguilar and other players like them, just like last year when the blanket waiver allowed against Star Thomas, Joey Aguilar, and other players as well to continue to play, Miles Kitzelman and other players around the country to play. So if Pavia's team wins its preliminary injunction hearing on February the 10th, it won't necessarily mean that Aguilar is good to go, but that's a really good sign, and a blanket waiver would probably follow, right? Or something along those lines. If it's denied, well, Aguilar is going to going by himself to try to get that injunction. Really, he's going to get a TRO, but ultimately he wants to get a preliminary injunction hearing that will allow him to be eligible to play in 2026. So if Pavia's case is denied, it's okay because, I wouldn't say it's a good thing, but you've got Joey Aguilar that's doing his own thing. If it's granted, well, that's a really good thing because in a roundabout way, Aguilar is going to be covered there as well. So I think this just gives you more options. I don't necessarily believe that it means like he's a shoo-in that he's going to be eligible. I don't really think it means one way or the other. I just think it means you're getting more options. And I do believe that doing it on the local level makes a whole lot more sense than doing it in federal court. So that's my opinion. Trying to talk about things I don't fully understand, and I'm not trying to act like an expert. So please don't believe I'm trying to be an expert on this topic, but that's kind of where I stand on that, and we will see what comes of this. But you knew it was coming whenever he got out of the Diego Pavia complaints last week when he hired his own lawyer. You knew he was going to take NCAA to court on his own lawsuit at some point, and ultimately Adam Sparks reported that was going to happen on Monday. So we'll see about what date that is for the hearing and all that, but it's notable. Joey Aguilar is trying to play football again for sure, trying to make more money, and obviously I don't have to even say what that means and what that changes in regards to Tennessee football's offensive outlook for the 2026 season. Of course, that's obviously a conversation for another day. Hey, when we come back, your mailbag questions, all that and more coming up next. We continue on here. It's your Tuesday morning Locked On Vols. Stay tuned. This is Mazda's moving the game forward for those who show there's more to the score than what's on the television screen. Let's go back to Nate Amen. We talk about him in this segment all the time. He wasn't very efficient from the field against Auburn. He was 4-16 from the field, but he got the charity stripe 15 times. He was 12 of 15 from the charity stripe, still finished with 19, 21 points, whatever it was. And he's finding ways to impact the game even when you're not that efficient from the field. Nate Amen is on a tear right now. Going into the Auburn game, he was averaging 21 points in his last 5 SEC games. He had a career-high 29 points against Alabama a couple weeks ago. He has been on fire, and it reminds us of what it really takes to raise the bar. That extra work off the court, dialing in every detail, giving it that extra fire, the grit, and the I never quit. You got Mazda that puts the same passion into every model. Highlights make the reel. What it took to get there makes it count. There's more to a Mazda because there's more to you. Mazda, where you can move and you can be moved. Hey, everybody. Thank you so much for making Locked On Vols your first listen of the day, your first watch. And thank you so much for making Locked On the #1 sports podcasting network. If you haven't already, go ahead and check out the Everydayer Club. You have an ad-free audio version, Locked On merch store access to the Locked On Everydayer Club Discord server where we can chat in a group setting, all that and more, just $5 a month. LockedOnVols.supercast.com. LockedOnVols.supercast.com for the Everydayer Club. Okay, we'll get into some of your mailbag questions. And one of the questions we had, trying to find which order I had it in, but here we go. Big Orange Highball, what's the feeling on Aguilar getting another season? Well, again, I still don't know. Like I said in segment number 1, I think that this just gives him another opportunity. I think it gives him another avenue so that if the Pavia lawsuit is unsuccessful, he has his own at a local level. And even if the Pavia case is successful, in a roundabout way, that will benefit Joey Aguilar as well, to the best of my knowledge, even though he's not a plaintiff anymore. So anyway, we'll see what happens, but ultimately he's going in there saying it's an antitrust law, saying like, hey, you're forbidding me the opportunity to profit off my name, image, and likeness. when I was in junior college, this being Diego Pavia, obviously, but also Joey Aguilar, and we'll see what happens. I'll be intrigued to see kind of what this looks like. I don't think this is anything that's going to be resolved quickly. Again, to my knowledge, there's not a date for the hearing. Tennessee starts spring practice in a little over a month, so we'll see what happens. Maybe there could be like Christmas in May again, like it was last year with Joey Aguilar, but we will have to see. Kevin wants to know, why do you assume that Ty Redmond's going to start? Feel like you are basing this off of the previous staff's MO, and I don't think that's the way it goes. I mean, true, but Ty Redmond was a really, really good player as a true freshman. Absolutely, he took his lumps. They targeted him early in the season for sure, but he got better and better and better, really good as the season went along. And he was one of Tennessee's best defensive players there towards the end. I know that's not saying much, but the reason this staff, he's going to be a day one starter. This staff worked to retain him. I don't think that he was like a flight risk or anything, but they made him an absolute priority to retain on this roster, okay? And based off his performance last year, he's going to be one of the most experienced cornerbacks in the Southeastern Conference, along with another experienced cornerback in the Southeastern Conference, Cain, who comes in here from Auburn. So based on the priority to make sure that he was retained on this roster, and based off his performance last year, I don't, just because one coaching staff left, one defensive staff left, and another one comes in, I don't think that changes much. Just my opinion. We'll go to William. Rick Barnes is getting along in the tooth, but do you think this year is his last year? I don't see him coaching more than one more year, if not. I don't know. Again, it's a very much a year by year situation with these coaches nowadays, or with Rick Barnes nowadays. I think that he really enjoys putting a team together in a quick amount of time via the transfer portal. And a lot of people thought the transfer portal would be something that would, cause him to retire. He loves that. He loves coaching old players. And but there was a point in time where there were 4 freshmen on the court the other night. And there's a lot to be excited about with the Troy Hendersons, the Mari Evans, the Dwayne Browns. I understand Nate Amend's not going to be here for that, but there's a lot to like about this freshman class. So I think he likes that a lot, and maybe that keeps him coaching another year or two longer. I don't know. Rick Barnes is a competitor. Won't shock me whatsoever if he retired after the season. Wouldn't shock me whatsoever if he kept on going. But I think this freshman class this year, knowing that Nate Amend's not going to be a part of it, not to be retained, he'll be in the NBA next year. But ultimately, I think this gives him a lot of juice, in my opinion. Ross, it wasn't all that long ago, but it was considered a negative for a quarterback to have multiple OCs during his career. Jared Garantano comes to mind. Now that we're in the NIL era, no one talks about that. Was it really that big of a negative as it was portrayed, or does it not matter now because there's money involved? That's a really good point. It's a really good point. I mean, I don't think it was never viewed as like a negative, but it was certainly an obstacle because, consistency. The more you're in tune with your coaches, in tune with the playbook, in tune with the verbiage and everything, the dialogue, the more comfortable you're going to feel, and ultimately the better you play. And so that was always the knock on having multiple OCs or multiple quarterback coaches throughout a 4-year run or 5-year run in college. Now with the transfer portal, you got quarterbacks moving all over the place. I will say this: if you're investing the quarterback market for this cycle, some of the top flight guys, $5 million, $6 million, right? If you're investing that much money, I do believe you're going to tailor a lot of your offense to fit who your quarterback's going to be. And I don't know if that was always the case, like with all these different offensive coordinators pre-transfer portal era. It's like, okay, you're going to run, but I'm going to run and we're going to move. I mean, any good coach will adapt to the talents there. I don't want to say that's not always the case, but I think when $6 million is on the line, you're willing to change a whole lot more, maybe more than you would have in previous years. So it's a really good point. It's something I haven't really, I've thought about it, but something I haven't really talked about because it was viewed as a bigger complication, before the transfer portal was a thing. Jared's got a couple of baseball questions. 3 fill-in-the-blank baseball questions. Most likely to have the most homers is, give me Levi Clark, either him or Henry Ford. Most likely to have the most stolen bases, Jay Abernathy. Most likely to have the most Ks on the mound, I will go Landon Mack. Most important players that must stay healthy for the team to live up to its potential. I mean, there's a lot of them. Henry Ford, absolutely. Give me Evan Blanco. could start, could be a primary bullpen arm. He's going to be a big arm for this pitching staff, transfer from Virginia. Obviously easy answers, Tegan Kuhn's, Landon Mack. They're going to be your Friday, Saturday in some order there. Levi Clark as well. Those are Blaine Brown. I think Blaine Brown's going to be big. Any of the above, right? All right, fun stuff. I know that was just only supposed to be one player in the fill in the blank, but I gave you a little bit more. Before Elander era officially begins, this is from Tyler. Who were your top 9 position players and top 5 pitchers from the Tony V era? Oh crap, I only did 5. I apologize. I just did 5 for each. Well, this opens it up a little bit. Top 5 pitchers, and again, these are just kind of my favorites to follow, watch, cover. I covered most of these guys. I'm not saying that these were the absolute best 5 statistically, but obviously pitching-wise, Garrett Crochet, self-explanatory. Drew Beam is going to be in there from what he meant to this program. Chase Dolander. You got Chase Burns, Chad Dallas, Cheese, okay? And then a extra credits, just because I want to do it, and you only asked for 5, but give me extra credit. I'm actually going to give you I'm going to give you extra credit here. I've already listed 5, but Xander and Kirby. Xander, obviously, what he meant to Tennessee the back half of that his senior season. Tennessee won a natty. You don't win a natty without Xander Seacrest. One of the most unbelievable stories. And Kirby, he was a ginormous piece to that puzzle for Tennessee in 2024. So those 2 guys are the honorable mentions. Top 9 position players, I only listed 5, but give me Christian Moore, Jordan Beck, Drew Gilbert. Luke Lipsius is going to be one for me. He's the OG of the Porch Podcast. So obviously he's going to be one of those guys I mentioned. Trey Lipscomb, Blake Burke, Cal Stark is in that one for me because he was a captain, he was a leader, he was a good catcher. I don't know, that's 8 or 9. A lot of people would say Ferguson. A lot of people would say Liam Spence now on the back. I think that's, as long as you got Semo, Jordan Beck, Drew Gilbert, Luke Lipsius, Trey Lipscomb, Blake Burke, Cal Stark for me. And then, of course, you can, maybe a Billy Amick, maybe an Andrew Fisher. Also, Liam Doyle, I didn't mention him as the pitcher. He was only here for 1 year. He's also the highest drafted player of the Tony Vitello era, Liam Doyle. So, I don't know, it's an impossible task because there's so many. Last question is going to go to Smokey Bear Vol. How would you compare the talent we brought in versus the talent that left in the transfer portal? This is actually a good show topic for another day. We can spend a little bit more time on that doing it another day because I think that's a really good show topic. But that will come at another day. Appreciate you guys for sending in your questions as you do each and every week right here on Locked On Vols. When we return, we'll check in with Donno of Locked On Hurricanes. We'll give the scout on Tennessee's newest cornerback from the Miami Hurricanes. All that and more coming up next. We continue on here. This is your Tuesday morning Locked On Vols. Stay tuned. Hiring isn't just about finding someone willing to take a job. It's about finding the right person with the right background who can actually help your business moving forward. And if you want candidates who match what you're looking for, Indeed sponsored jobs is the move, because instead of just hoping the right person stumbles across your post, Indeed helps you match with quality candidates by boosting your job listing to people who fit your specific criteria like skills, certifications, and locations. It saves time because you're spending less energy sorting through the mismatches, and with the sponsored jobs, your post gets seen by candidates who are actually a right fit for you. Here's a stat that says it all right? In the minute or so that I've been talking to you, companies like yours have made 27 hires on Indeed, according to the Indeed data worldwide. So if you're hiring, spend less time searching and more time interviewing candidates who check all your boxes with Indeed sponsored jobs. Listeners of this show will get $75 sponsored job credit. $75 sponsored job credit to help get your job the premium status it deserves at Indeed.com/podcast. Indeed.com/podcast. Terms and conditions do apply. Hiring, do it the right way. You can do it the right way with Indeed. Hey, I want to welcome on to the show Locked On Hurricanes host Alex Donno, one of the best in the network, one of the best we have to offer. He does a fantastic job, and wanted to get his 2 cents on Jadias Richard, who's transferring from Miami to Tennessee, a cornerback who has 1 year of eligibility remaining. He's been around the block. He was in Miami for 3 years, started at Vanderbilt, but got that red shirt this past year. Alex, what can you tell me just overall thoughts on Richard as a player and as a cornerback?
Yeah, I mean, the first thing that stands out about Richard, and it's why Miami liked him in the first place when they acquired him in 2023 from Vanderbilt, the size and the physicality. I mean, Miami likes their long corners. I imagine Tennessee does as well because that kind of fits the whole SEC mold. At 6'1", 195, he not only has the ability, to go up against bigger opposing receivers, but he's also got speed and positional versatility. I think one of the things that makes Jadais like such a valuable, potential depth piece or spot starter if needed is, he can play corner, he can play some nickel. I think it's also possible for him to play a little safety if necessary. Like he's a very well-rounded defensive back, and it's why, he had his struggles with injury, which I'm sure we'll talk about. It was one, very serious injury, but at the times when he was available for Miami, like in 2024, early on in the season, Miami had some injuries at cornerback, including Damari Brown, who was one of the starters to begin the season, and they were able to plug Jadias Richard in to play a pretty important role that year. So he's a valuable piece to have.
Yeah, let's talk about that injury. Again, he was, whether it was because of injuries or whatever, he started 8 games in 24. So I mean, he was a guy suffered that injury. What was that injury? When was that injury? And when did he kind of come back? And what did he look like in 25? Because again, I didn't watch Miami games all year long, but it looks like he wasn't available, and when he was, it was very sparingly.
Yeah, so it was in later in the season in 2024. It was in a game against Duke in early November. He suffered a really bad, it was a torn ACL. I'm not sure if it was like multiple ligaments, but it was a season-ending injury, and it was bad. I mean, it was you could tell just by the look of it on the field that it was a bad knee injury. And so, that cost him the end of the 2024 season. And honestly, losing a guy like Richard late in the year when Miami had other corner injuries, that was one of the reasons why Miami's defense got even worse at the end of that 2024 season, and why they ultimately did not get into the playoffs that year despite Cam Ward. So it was a serious injury, and I knew heading into 2025, of course, he stayed with Miami, didn't leave in the portal. It's hard to leave when you're seriously injured, of course. Had a feeling it would be potentially an injury that would cost him the entire 2025 season. But he really rocked his rehab, Richard, and I think he was able to kind of get himself ready to return ahead of schedule. Because I'll tell you, Eric, when he made his 2025 season debut, I think it was in November, late in the season, the Miami media, myself included, like, we were very surprised. Like, is that Jadias Richard? Is he playing again? So he was able to have, didn't have enough reps to burn the red shirt this year, so he kept the year of eligibility, but, did have a few, semi-meaningful reps down the stretch of Miami's regular season where Miami was must win. Like, they had to win out in order to get into the playoff, and they did. So, I think he rocked his recovery, and it was actually nice to see him kind of get a few reps, because that'll help him build a little momentum when he heads into Tennessee, so he won't have, a full almost 2 years without playing football when he gets to Knoxville.
Yeah, Tennessee fans know all about that type of injury. It was Jamal McCoy that was training for the 25 season in early January back at home, and he tore his ACL, and it's like, oh, well, can you get him for half the games? Can you get him for a little bit? And ultimately, he didn't play at all. So, I mean, Tennessee fans kind of experienced that, and that's why they went out and got Colton Hood, who in turnaround is probably going to be a first-round pick as well. According to Pro Football Focus, Jadias Richard came back in Week 11, played 13 snaps against Syracuse, 4 snaps against NC State, 3 snaps against Virginia Tech. Now, again, take it with a grain of salt. It's an impossible job, but according to Pro Football Focus, he was playing free safety. Now, primarily he's been a corner. You mentioned versatility. He can move around, play the star, the safety, the nickel, and all that. Where does he best fit? I think Tennessee sees him as a corner. But what does he also bring to the table? What's his best attribute in that versatility?
Yeah, well, I agree that his best position is as a corner, and he's a very strong tackler. So I think just the physical coverage ability, like he plays press very well. I think you combine that physicality and coverage with also his tackling, and I think his tackling is what allows him to have that versatility to free safety. He looks like an SEC player, and obviously was at the SEC prior a year with Vanderbilt. So I think a place like Tennessee is a good fit for him because he's not going to look out of place, right? I'm sure the Vols are the same way. Miami doesn't like having 5'9", 5'10" corners on the field. They like all their guys to be in the 6'1", 6'2" range, and so he's someone who plays that mold and plays physically. But I would say like his overall strength, and it's a big picture thing again. I think to be able to have a guy like him as a backup at multiple different positions where, who knows, he may start some games for the Vols this year, but even if he doesn't, he'll probably see a lot of playing time kind of filling spots in multiple roles. And I think you'll see that in practice as well. He'll probably do some cross-training with multiple different spots in the defensive backfield.
Yeah, Tennessee needs serious depth at corner. Bring back one, brought in Cain from Auburn, who's the 3-year starter, so you would assume that he's probably going to be another starting cornerback, but Richard could fill in back there, be the third. Tennessee needs help at star, brought in Quay Moss from Kansas State, but I don't know if anybody else. It's a new-look defense, new coaches, so we'll see what happens in spring ball, but I don't know who else can play star on this roster, so I think Richard could maybe fall into there as well. At the end of this season, obviously Miami went to the national championship game. He played in 3 games. It was the last 3 games of the regular season, so he could preserve that red shirt. To my knowledge, didn't play at all in the playoffs or anything. Kind of where was he at the end of the season when Miami was making that run? Was he just there ready to roll? Was it? I guess it wasn't any special teams as well. Kind of what was his role there towards the end?
Yeah, he was available if needed, but I think in that situation, once Miami got into the playoffs and through the playoffs, the rotations just really tightened up. I'm not going to say like playing him late in the regular season was doing him a favor or anything, because again, those were all must-win games for Miami, so they trusted him enough to put him on the field.
Yeah.
But I think once Miami got to the playoff, he was probably looked at as someone who, hey, he's got a little bit of rust. We're going to kind of, shrink our defensive backs rotations, and they didn't rotate as much as they did during the regular season. So I think he was good to go physically. And then I also think even though, playoffs didn't count against redshirt eligibility, they were probably just doing right by him because God forbid you re-aggravate something.
Yeah.
I think they had a good idea come playoff time that he was someone who was probably going to hit the transfer portal. So I think they just wanted to err on the side of caution.
Yeah, it's a guy, again, that started, I think it was 7 games actually in 24, missed the last couple of games, started a game in 23, made 11 appearances with Vanderbilt in 2022 with 1 start. He logged 405 defensive snaps in 24, 187 in 23, 203 snaps as a true freshman at Vanderbilt in 2022. These are all defensive snaps. So again, a guy that's been around the block and kind of knows what it takes to win and play this position. Last thing, I guess going back to that 23 or 2022 transfer portal cycle, if you remember, why did he leave Vanderbilt? Just more opportunity, I presume. And what did Miami like about him? And did they consider him a guy that could come in and contend and start right away, rotational piece? Why did he leave Vanderbilt, and what attracted Miami to him?
Yeah, I remember chatting with Jadais, shortly after he transferred to Miami, and opportunity, I think a higher profile of program. Over the last couple of years, with Diego Pavia and stuff, Vanderbilt raised their profile a little bit, but it wasn't really like that when Jadais was with Vandy. So I think the raise of profile and the opportunity at Miami, because at the time, Miami, because his first year was 2023, 2022 before he arrived was the first year of Mario Cristobal in 22, and the whole roster was basically a disaster. And they knew after that first season that they really needed to revamp the defense, and that's when they brought in Jadais at 6'1". Miami recruited some big corners like Damari Brown, who's in the 6'1", 6'2" range. So I just really think there was an emphasis at that time to kind of revamp the defensive backfield with bigger physical SEC style players, and so. I think that was what was attractive about Jadais, the fact that he was a guy who could play physical and he could tackle. So I thought it was a good fit. And who knows, if not for the injury and him kind of falling out of Miami's rotation, you never know. Like if had it not been for that ACL tear, he might have finished out that season strong, and who knows, he could still be a Hurricane to this day. But I think it just kind of made sense for him and for Miami, more so for Jadais, because I think Miami would have kept him happily if he didn't want to leave. But I think it made more sense for him to maybe look for a different opportunity, because I'm not sure again if he'll be a starter in Tennessee, but he definitely would not have been a starter in Miami this coming season. So I think he was looking for a change of scenery. And honestly, I wish Jadais the best. He's a great guy. And so I hope that this works out as well for you guys as Jacoby Thomas did at Miami this past year, because he had a fantastic season. So maybe the reverse will be true with Jadais.
Really great stuff there from Donno of Locked On Hurricanes. Does a fantastic job giving us the scout on a Tennessee new defensive back. Probably a depth piece, but hey, we'll see what happens. Fun show. Sorry I ran long a little bit. A lot to get into, but hope you guys enjoyed it. Thank you so much for the questions, comments, concerns, and the mailbag edition of the show. We'll come back tomorrow, Award Wednesday. What does he think about the Joey Aguilar situation? What does he think about Tennessee basketball? Winners of 3 straight, all that and more for Award Wednesday coming up on tomorrow's show. Appreciate you guys. As always, have a blessed rest of your day. This is Locked On Vols.